Update. Use dating apps to eat at 5-star restaurants without ever paying a dime until the quiet guy from work matched with me. I thought he was just another lonely wallet. Until he said, "Actually, I think you suggested this place, didn't you?" That's when I realized I'd just been played at my own game. Except I stood there feeling like the biggest idiot who ever lived. "You're friends with Casper?" I managed to choke out, even though I already knew the answer. Daniel nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. "He's been worried about you," he said, and I could hear the fake concern dripping from his voice. "Thinks maybe you're not meeting the right kind of guys through those apps." I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of his fake worry and Casper's interference in my personal life, but we were still in public, and I was already attracting way too much attention. Instead, I just stared at him, trying to understand how this had all gone so wrong so fast. This morning, I'd been excited about a free meal at an expensive restaurant and maybe even some leftovers for tomorrow's lunch. Now I was out $100 in my pride, and Monday morning was going to be an absolute nightmare because Casper would definitely want to hear all about how his little plan had worked out. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," Daniel said as I turned to leave. I could hear the smugness in his voice, even though he was trying to sound polite. I walked out of that restaurant feeling like everyone was staring at me, like they all knew I'd just been completely humiliated by the most boring man alive. My car was running on fumes, which meant I'd have to choose between gas and groceries for the rest of the week. All because some widower and my nosy coworker decided to teach me a lesson I never asked for. Monday morning came like a death sentence, and I spent the entire weekend dreading the moment I had to face Casper at work. I practiced angry speeches in my shower, planned cutting remarks that would put him in his place, and convinced myself that I was the real victim in this whole situation. After all, what I did with my dating life was none of his business, and setting me up like that was basically workplace harassment, maybe even illegal, depending on how you looked at it. I walked into the office ready for war. But when I saw Casper at his desk, something in his expression told me this was going to be even worse than I'd imagined. He looked almost sorry for me, which was somehow more infuriating than if he'd been gloating about his successful little scheme. "So," I said, dumping my purse at my workstation loud enough for half the office to hear, "I hope you're proud of yourself." But instead of the argument I was expecting, Casper just sighed like I was exhausting him and said, "Ashley, we really need to talk." That's when he told me something that made my blood run completely cold. Daniel wasn't just his friend, Daniel was friends with half the guys in our age range in this entire city, including 3 of the men I'd scammed over the past 2 months. While I'd been congratulating myself on my brilliant system and keeping detailed spreadsheets of my earnings, word had been spreading through their social circles about the girl who used dating apps to get free meals. They had a group chat. They'd been comparing notes about me. They knew my real name, where I worked, which restaurants I preferred, even some of the lies I told about my job and my interests. "They call you the dinner bandit," Casper said. I could see he was trying not to smile. "Daniel volunteered to take one for the team and give you a taste of your own medicine." What I thought was my secret weapon had become a running joke among every decent guy in town. They were sharing screenshots of my dating profiles, warning each other about my tactics, even rating the restaurants I'd taken them to. I wasn't some clever mastermind, I was the punchline of jokes I'd never even heard. The humiliation was complete, but it was about to get so much worse. By lunchtime, someone had posted about the whole thing on social media, not mentioning my name directly, but with enough details that anyone who knew me would figure it out immediately. The post was something about girls who use dating apps like meal delivery services and how one local guy decided to turn the tables. It got shared dozens of times, with comments from people I recognized talking about how they'd always suspected something was off about girls who ordered the most expensive thing on the menu and then disappeared. By the end of the week, I couldn't get a match on any dating app that lasted more than a few messages. Guys would chat with me just long enough to ask if I was that girl from the post, then unmatch the second I didn't respond or try to change the subject. Even guys from other cities somehow knew about me. Apparently, the story had spread beyond just local social media groups. My foolproof system was completely destroyed, and I was back to eating ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches like some broke college student. But the worst part wasn't even the money I was missing out on. It was knowing that Casper and Daniel and probably dozens of other guys were out there laughing about how they'd outsmarted me, who'd been so proud of being clever enough to game the system and live better than my paycheck should have allowed. Now I was the cautionary tale they told their friends about crazy women on dating apps. I was the reason guys would insist on coffee dates or splitting checks. I'd made dating harder for every woman in the city, and they probably hated me for it too. 6 months later, I'm still single, still broke, and still completely bitter about the whole thing. I've tried using different photos, creating profiles on apps I'd never used before, even apps that were supposed to be for people in different cities, but somehow word always gets around. The guy network is apparently way stronger than I ever gave it credit for, and my reputation follows me everywhere I go. I can't even go to some of the restaurants I used to love because I'm worried I'll run into one of my former marks or, worse, Daniel and whatever basic girlfriend he's probably dating now. Sometimes I see him around town. He's with someone now, some plain-looking woman who probably insists on paying for half their meals like an idiot. And I want to march up to him and tell him that he ruined my entire life over $96.37. But I know that's not really the whole truth. What really destroyed everything was that I can't get back at them without making myself look even worse than I already do. They won completely, and I lost everything. And there's no way to fix it, get revenge, or even make them understand how unfair this whole thing is. So now I just keep my head down at work, avoid Casper as much as possible in our small office, and try not to think about all the expensive meals I'm missing out on while I'm microwaving soup for lunch every day. It's not fair that men can use women for sex and get high fives from their friends. But when a woman uses men for dinner, she becomes some kind of pariah. It's not fair that they get to decide what's acceptable behavior and then punish women who don't follow their rules. And it's definitely not fair that I'm the one who got made an example of when there are probably hundreds of other women doing the exact same thing I was doing. But apparently, fairness was never part of the deal. And I just wish I'd figured that out before it was too late to protect myself. Now I'm stuck eating gas station sandwiches and watching other women post pictures of fancy restaurants on social media, knowing that I could have been doing the same thing if Casper had just minded his own business. Instead, I'm living proof that no good deed goes unpunished. Except in this case, the good deed was teaching entitled men a lesson about their own desperation, and the punishment was having my entire social life destroyed by guys who couldn't handle being outsmarted by a woman.